Good afternoon. So we seem to be having some technical issues with our chair today, Graham. However, I'm going to introduce Mark, who's our first speaker this afternoon. So Mark will be joining us shortly on stage, and he will kickstart this afternoon's workshop. So Mark, if you'd like to accept the invitation. Fantastic. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
Fabulous. I will leave it with you.
Right, okay. Super thrilled to be here today for a number of reasons. So in the next 10 minutes, and I've only got 10 minutes, I'm going to talk you through my day job, talk you through my interesting side hustle, and then I'm going to focus on talking about vision, which is the one thing that really excites me about both roles I play. And then hopefully by the end of my 10 minutes, I'm going to help you with your homework, which is developing a vision, overcoming obstacles, and making vision a reality. So what's my day job? I'm the co-founder of a business called Ellandi. We're one of the UK's biggest investors in town centre real estate. We're the biggest independent operator of shopping centres and one of the leading repurposing businesses. Particularly excited to be talking to Kent and Medway, councillors and businesses, because we are very involved in Kent. We are the partners of Medway on the Pentagon Shopping Centre. We've got a great relationship with the folk from Folkestone in respect of Bouverie Place and the adjacent Debenhams, where we've been working together on some visioning. And we own the shopping centre in Dartford, and Dartford is a fantastic little town with tons and tons of potential. So that's the day job, and that's my connection with Kent and Medway. Side hustle is I'm the chair of the government's High Street Taskforce, which is something of a side hustle, and it's quite all-encompassing, to be fair, but it is very exciting and it's very invigorating because this organisation has never been needed more. To be fair to our absent chair at the moment, Mr. Galpin, he played a pivotal role in advising Sir John Timpson on the report he did, which gave birth to the High Street Taskforce. And Sir John had a number of asks of government. One was put some money at work, which resulted in the Future High Street Fund. Secondly, was to set up the High Street Taskforce. The High Street Taskforce is a body which the government pays for the next 5 years, which is run by the Institute for Place Management. And we're here to help you as placemakers deliver 4 things. One is expertise. Secondly is capacity. Third is to promote collaboration. And this sort of event is fabulous at doing that. And the fourth is to provide information, training, and best practice. And there's many, many case studies within Kent that I know of, which we should be celebrating on a national basis as best practice. So that's the, I was going to say boring bit out of the way, but this is the bit I want to talk about, which is about creating the vision, talking about the vision. So for me, I'm very much into an advocate of purpose-based placemaking. For me, every bit of purpose-based placemaking has to start with a vision. So what is a vision? I'll come back to it in 2 seconds. But a vision is basically the critical success factor that's going to make a difference between your place being successful or not being successful. And what I will also do is talk about the difference between creating a vision and creating a master plan. And as a side issue from this, why most master plans are rubbish and fail to deliver. When I started thinking about vision as a business, one of the things that drove me to the idea that vision is at the core of everything you should do is that there's a lot of places in the UK do everything they should. They do everything that placemakers like me, national leaders, tell them to do stuff, and the places still don't work. And I was wondering, why is that? Why is that? And for me, it's because what happens is when anybody comes together to try and create a vision or create a master plan, they go to the what. Now, we've got a very learned group here, many of which may have seen Simon Sinek's very famous TED Talk. It's had 53 million views, I noticed this morning. It's called How Great Leaders Inspire Action, but it's all about putting the why first. And I think that's what we need to do with placemaking. That's what we need to do with purpose-based placemaking. And that's what we need to do with visioning. Because for me, when visioning fails is when people go straight to the what. What do we need? What does this town need? What does this place need? What does this county need to make it better? And you draw up this long list of things that you've seen elsewhere, that work elsewhere, and then you try and cram them into a town. And that's the problem with a lot of master plans. Is you start with a blank piece of paper, you have a list of things you want in the town, and then an architect will draw up a vision. That's putting the what first. To create a credible vision, what you need to do is you have to be thinking about why. Why is this place special? Why do we love it? Why do we think it's got a sustainable future? Why should other people care? And if you can then create this purposeful vision, this unique vision for your place, everything else flows from there. So then the next thing is, how do we make that happen? And then following in from that is, what do we do to make the vision real? So rather than starting with what, start with why. Start with a vision for why your place is special, why you care about this place, and why other people should care about this place. So start with the why, start with the special, and then work out to what you want to deliver on your vision. Now, if you work that way, you then overcome your obstacles, because one of the obstacles that often happens within placemaking is a lack of leadership. And a lack of leadership occurs sometimes because you have a lack of expertise. Well, the task force is here to help with that. Sometimes it happens because of a lack of capacity. The task force is here to help with that. But quite often it fails because there is a lack of leadership. And what leadership needs is the vision of which to lead. So if you have this clear vision, which everybody buys into, the obstacles we've talked about can be overcome because the leadership will get rid of the obstacles, because true leadership will overcome any obstacle. And we've seen that all over the UK. Places far more damaged by inequality or the problems of the high street. Inspirational leadership, like in Stockton with Neil Schneider, who's the CEO of the council there. They're doing some dramatic interventions in their town centre. They've bought 2 shopping centres. They're going to demolish one and decant all the tenants into the other. And this is secondary to their vision. Their vision is that Stockton High Street is going to be the UK's largest open air amphitheatre. And everything else they're doing is secondary to that. It all feeds into this vision. And the reason Neil is a leading placemaker who's hugely respected throughout the industry is because he's got the buy-in from that vision, from his other executives, from the local populace, and from the politicians to create this vision. And that's enabled him to do these crazy things, like buy 2 failing shopping centres to create one good one. So you've got your vision, which everybody believes in. It creates this passion, which then inspires great leadership, and then make that vision a reality. Now, that's tricky at the moment. Let's not shy away from this fact. One of the problems we have with our places is we've got the retail industry in a state that it's never been in before, and alternative use values aren't necessarily coming through quickly enough to replace the retail as it falls away. But that is going to solve itself in time, because alternative uses that we will talk about, that you will be talking about, such as leisure, such as healthcare, such as residential, will replace the value of some of the retail as it falls. So I think what I've basically tried to condense a 45-minute talk I do into about 5 minutes. So sorry if I haven't quite hit everything. But the takeaway for me is, think about what makes your space special. Why should it exist? Think about how that inspires action, and then think about, following that action, what are the outcomes at the end, rather than thinking about what do we want and how do we get there. Hopefully, I think I've done that in less than 10 minutes. That's going to give you enough provocation and enough thinking, radical thinking, to think about vision and think about how to make visions real, to help you with your homework later on in this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark, for that. That's fantastic. It appears Graham's still having some technical issues at the moment. So I'm going to introduce Peter Nutting. If you could please turn your camera and microphone on now, and that will bring you to stage. Yes.
Louis, if I may, because if you've got a couple of minutes, because Graham is not with us. So Peter, can you, at the end of your presentation, answer one of my questions? Is how did you use your vision to empower your leadership to overcome the obstacles and make your vision a reality? Because I think if you can answer that, it's really going to help as they break off into their groups to answer the homework questions they've got.
Okay, a difficult question to finish with.
Sorry,
it's all right.
Right, but you've done some very brave things in Shrewsbury, so you've clearly got that vision and you have that leadership. So
yeah, okay. Well, if I can introduce myself to everyone, I'm Peter Nutting. I'm the leader of Shropshire Council, and Shropshire Council have actually bought 3 shopping centres in the middle of Shrewsbury. We're one above Stockton. We've gone to 3, and we are reshaping the shopping centres ourselves. The one biggest shopping centre will remain as the main retail unit for the area. There's about 50 retail units actually in that shopping centre. What we are doing with one of the others, it's called the Pride Hill Centre. We're going to reshape it all together, and we're actually abandoning our Shire Hall, which is a couple of miles out of the town centre, and we're going to move into the shopping centre. We're going to convert it into offices for Shropshire Council. And we see the advantage of that, of bringing probably 300 to 400 workers daily into the town centre. And dare I say it, council workers are pretty well paid. So we're bringing quite a huge amount of money into the town centre. Now, we can't direct workers to go and spend their money in the shops, but we think it offers huge opportunities for increasing the retail spend in the town. The 3rd shopping centre, we're going to demolish and start again. And that's in its own way slightly controversial, because there is a major multi-storey car park on that site, but it was built in the 60s. It's not going to fall down, but it hasn't got a long time lifespan. But the problem is, in the 60s, cars were, say, 5 foot wide, whereas they're 7 foot wide now. And as you try to go up the ramps and round all the corners, it's a nightmare. And eventually you find a spot, and sometimes you have to reverse in, sometimes you go in forward. Whichever way you go in, it's almost impossible to get out your car, because there's either a pillar in the way or a car in the way. So we do need to actually reshape and reform parking within the shopping centres, because that's in part of our ownership. So we are doing lots of things. I'll try and at the end I'll talk about how we got about it. But so that's part of my remit as leader of Shropshire Council. One of the problems, of course, is we paid 50 million for the shopping centres, and the recent evaluation is a lot less. Now, we didn't buy them for financial reasons. We bought them for place shaping reasons. And we do believe in the longer term, the money will sort itself out and we'll get back to the right valuation. But it is a difficult scenario sometimes. But talking about the high street itself, and it's not just about shopping centres, is it? I think that's the whole point. The high street has got to be something different in the future. There will be retail. I'm old. I'm not into buying things online much. I do occasionally, but my wife and my children, they say, why do I need to go into the town centre? I can get everything I need online. So we've got to change that attitude, and we've got to make town centres a more welcoming place. It's interesting. I think things like cinemas, theatres, culture will play have got a role to play in that. Also, funnily enough, I did do a spiel, and I'm going to change it now because of some of the stuff Mark said, because we're on the same sort of ideas. Doctor's surgeries, Shropshire Council have actually built a doctor's surgery in partnership with the CCG in the town centre. So I think health has a role to play. I think we've got to be very open-minded about how we do this. It's what I call, and I'm sure everybody uses the same sort of phrases, we've got to move to a more cafe culture, a continental type culture, because I think even now, without the retail, people will want to go into town centres. Saturday afternoon, especially in the summer, Shrewsbury is heaving with people. But what we've got to do is allow them to actually enjoy a cafe culture. And from a council perspective, we've got to be far more relaxed about the rules about who can have tables and chairs outside, how we can do it. And we've also probably, and this is one that as a Conservative is more difficult, we've got to allow more cycling and more pedestrianisation. And I have the challenge of managing the battle between the cyclists and the pedestrians and the car users. That's a difficult balance. But I think getting that balance right is going to be one of the keys to how town centres work in the future. what we're going to do, I talked about a multi-storey car park that we're going to have to knock down, but we're not going to rebuild it on the same spot. Shrewsbury's surrounded by a river, and that car park is within the river. What we've got to do is build it outside the loop of the river. So within the loop of the river tends to be given over to pedestrians and cyclists, and the cars parks are on the outside of the river. Within, I mean, we're talking 5-minute walking distance, so it's not a huge amount of distance, but I think that will be key to it. Now, it was interesting because one of the reasons Shrewsbury, I think, has been highlighted is because we've got a thing called the Big Town Plan. And the Big Town Plan is a visionary document. It's not a planning document. And I think what Mark was hinting at, and I'll say in simple terms, I think the worst thing you can do when you're trying to redesign a town centre or reinvigorate a town centre is ask the planners. You need more of a concept and vision. They get into the detail too much rather than the vision. And what I've been trying to sell is the vision for where I see the town going forward rather than the detail. We're starting to get into the detail because the Big Town Plan is available. If anybody wants to see it, just go on the internet, Shrewsbury Big Town Plan, and you'll get all sorts of stuff. So I think the idea that you need a visionary document rather than an actual supplementary planning guidance or something like that. We are going to attach the Big Town Plan to the review of Shropshire's local plan. So it will be a material consideration in future planning applications, but it won't be written in actually tablets of stone. But high streets are going to be different. I used to have a shop on the high street. It was a sports shop. So I retired a couple of years ago. I think I got out just in time as it happens. So I do sort of get it. And I think the tension for most areas, and I'm not familiar with some of the towns in Kent, is always going to be the tension between the motor car and the pedestrian and the cyclist. And that's one of the major concerns. Within the Big Town Plan, there's a huge part of it is about the movement strategy, and it is about how you deal with people, because if town centres are going to be successful, you've got to get people into them, and you've got to get people into them in a as easy a way as possible. And I was going to say as cheap a way. I don't actually think, strange enough, the car parking charges are as big a deterrent as people sometimes believe, as long as within reason. I argue in Shropshire, it isn't so much how much you charge, it's making it easy for people to pay. Because even I sometimes go to car parking machines and it's a bloody nightmare. They want this, that and the other, and you end up pressing buttons. And in the end, people give up if you're not careful. You've got to make the machines easy to use. You've got to be able to use them online. You've got to be able to use them with a card. You've got to be able to put cash in. You've got to make it as easy as possible. I'm trying to think what else as I say, Mark said a lot of what I was going to say. So how did I get the Big Town Plan together? Well, I'm the Conservative leader of Shropshire Council. Now, as it happens, I'm also a member of Shrewsbury Town Council, and the Shrewsbury Town Council is a big town council. It's 75,000 population, and the hinterland around Shrewsbury were probably up to 120,000. As it happened, the Town Council has got a Labour leader. We have joined together on the Big Town Plan, and I think that is one of the keys to success. There isn't too much politics in it, and we've also got a business improvement district in Shrewsbury, and that they are the three partners in the Big Town Plan. We also involve chambers of commerce and all the, the movers and shakers in the town. And I think if you're ever going to have success with things like this, you've got to collaborate with people. And the other thing you have got to do, you have got to be prepared to put a bit of money up front, because, as I say, it's not good a council saying, well, I'll get the planning department to design a plan for the planners are planners. We need somebody who've got much more commercial nous, much more wide ideas. Let them cut. Let's have the vision, and let the planners then sort it out afterwards. So I think, talking to people is part of the key. We've had lots of workshops in our own shopping centres, as it happens, because we've got a couple of spare units that we use, but it allows us to get together, and we invite the public to some of those. And I think that's part of the way to actually bring everybody on board. If you haven't got everybody with you, you're going to hit problems. In terms of how, well, some of it is political, in that I have had to bang heads together. Sometimes council officers a little bit, or banging heads is the wrong phrase, encourage them to think slightly differently is probably a better way of putting it. So, you know, there's got to be leadership. I provide the leadership from Shropshire Council. The Labour leader of the Town Council, to be fair, is excellent. He does provide leadership from the Town Council, which is the more local council. The bid, the guy has got a guy called Seb Slater. I think he's been down talking to you in Kent at various times anyway, and he's on board. So we have got a good collaboration. We've all, over a couple of years, put 50,000 each in, so it's 150,000 that helps to finance the workings. But I think we've got a good way forward. I'm not actually negative about the High Street. I actually think it's going to be very positive going forward, but it's going to be very different, and that's got to be the key. This idea that everybody's going to go shopping isn't the thing that they're going to do. There will be shopping, there will be retail, but there'll also be a lot of leisure, and not necessarily a theatre or stuff like that. It is just cafe culture, people sitting down, actually talking to each other, and I can see that as the way forward. I haven't even kept an eye on the clock.
Peter, in the absence of Graham, if I may play back to you a few things. I mean, look, clearly your council are well known to the High Street Taskforce, and you've been very generous in your time helping us with case studies. And there's many things you are doing are absolutely best practice. You know, what I think there is one truism is about local government and government nationally using the gravity of their use as a force for regeneration. They shouldn't have to do all of the heavy lifting, but being able to cram essential public services back into town centres to increase vitality is a key role that government can play, and you're clearly doing that, which should be celebrated. I suppose one of the things I was railing against, maybe advice to the various workshops who are going off, is, you know, especially I do know Kent very well. That's my teenage son coming to say hello. Hello. Is Kent does have a lot of very different towns, and one of the things that does worry me about the placemaking conversations we have is that the same solutions won't work everywhere. And this goes back to this purpose piece and the why piece. Is, you know, a cinema is not going to regenerate every town. You know, Altrincham is justly famous for its food hall, and Matt College, who is the CEO of Trafford Council, sorry, who initiated all of that intervention in the town centre, is as sick as hearing about the food hall as some other people in the placemaking industry are, because he wants to talk about the process, because it's actually the process which is important rather than just focusing on the output. Their output was a food hall, which is right for Altrincham, because it works for Altrincham, because they had a beautiful building, because they've got quite an affluent number of shoppers who can use the space, and they've got a great Victorian hinterland. But that's not going to work everywhere. And again, so when individual places in Kent, which are, you know, quite startlingly different, come together as towns and places, they need to be thinking of us. You know, what is special about us, and what is going to work for us, rather than just having a tick list of things. Although, you know, inspiration like Shrewsbury and best practice that you'll find on the High Street Taskforce will help. Think about yourselves first before just looking at shiny things that work elsewhere.
I actually agree that there's a different answer for almost every town, and I've talked about Shrewsbury, but Shropshire's got lots of other towns. They tend to be smaller, and they're more easy to access, and we actually find open markets work very well in the smaller towns, and smaller businesses. And I think the smaller businesses have survived what's gone on in the last year much better than bigger businesses, because if there's any empty units in Shrewsbury, it's mainly national chains that have closed down units. It hasn't been the more local shops which provide a more personal service. The other thing in terms of councils, and I'm probably having to go with Kent and Medway here, and we've all got to think this, we've got to stop allowing planning permissions out of town, on edge of town for retail. We've got to get a certain amount of retail back into the middle of the towns. So Mark's smiling, so I think I'm on the right track. Louise,
that's music to my ears.